Right, today we can study a sutta, Mahā Vedalla Sutta, which was requested by Sister Siuge, I think. Is that right? Okay, so
Get
this is,
true, sister, get true.
oh, get you, sorry. It's the get you. Well, I got the gate right. The chu. All right. So now this is one of those really interesting sutta, quite deep, lots of teachings in it. It's a very interesting sutta in the sense that it is quite unique. Well, it's not the only one. There are a few set of unique suttas. This sutta is by way of question and answer, a catechism. So it's this Mahā Koṭṭhita, one of the 80 great elders, meets Venerable Sariputta, the Buddha's right-hand monk, and he answers the questions. So it goes back and forth like that. Now, what is wonderful is you find these two are both enlightened arahats, but here they are questioning each other for our benefit. They talk to each other, two awakened minds talking to each other, questioning each other, so that we hear their minds. We hear their wisdom in words that can help us understand the Dhamma and lead us to the path, at least to happiness in this life. So this catechism, this word in Pali is right there in the title, Vedalla. Vedalla. Of course, the Vedalla has got a kind of a deeper meaning. It means both wisdom and joy. There is this joy in knowing also. The joy part comes from Veda, because Veda is an Indian word. It means joyful knowledge. And then the Brahmins use it for their Veda. So you find the Buddha often uses these words already known by the Indians, and he gave them new meaning, beautiful new meaning. So Vedalla is one of those words. Maha here, it means there is a chula. There's a longer one, the Maha, and then there's a shorter one, chula. So this is the Mahā Vedalla Sutta, and this number is M43, Majjhima Nikaya 43. So there you are. The English translation is the discourse on the greater catechism, Sariputta, on the nature of wisdom and freedom. Right. So Mahā Koṭṭhita was one of the 80 great elders. So these are the great arahats, and they all have some specialty. So in the case of Mahā Koṭṭhita, he's the master of the analytic insights. In other words, he is very good in looking at the arising of things, origin of things, causes of things. He understands the Dharma ideas very clearly, and he's very good in language. And the fourth quality is wit. He's got very sharp wit, so in other words, he's a great teacher. Most arahats have got these qualities. Mahā Koṭṭhita is the monk who is foremost with this quality. And of course, you have Sariputta, who has the greatest wisdom of them all. So we have these two great teachers getting together and presenting us the Mahā Vedalla Sutta. So let us, okay, there's one more point. The early classification of the Buddha's teachings, right? Now, if you can go a bit down to number 2. Go down to number 2, please. Yeah, section 2. Okay, there you are. All right, so here we have what I call the Navanga Sattu Sasana. Navanga Sattu Sasana. Okay, please remember the system we use in Sutta Discovery is to help you study Pali. We simplify the long words. The Germans will love this because it's very similar to German. In fact, this is one word. So if you read in the Pali or Sanskrit or Sinhalese, they're kind of one word, you know. Navanga Sattu Sasana. But here I've broken it up into 4 parts. Nava means 9. Anga means limbs or parts. Satu is the teacher, the Buddha in this case. Sasana, teaching. The 9 limbs of the teacher's teaching. Okay, this is a kind of a classification of the Buddha's teaching, an early classification. So, of course, by early I mean early during the canonical period during the Buddha's lifetime, but later when lots of teachings have been given, so the teachings were classified. The best known are, of course, the suttas, right? So you have 9 names. They will memorize it by reciting Sutta, Geya, Vyakarana, Gata, Udana, Iti, Uttaka, Jataka, Abhuta, Dhamma, Vedalla. So Vedalla is last, notice. Sutta, of course, are the teachings of the Buddha gathered together, compiled very nicely, located somewhere. All right. I used to explain sutta meaning thread, sutra, yeah? But there's another derivation from the Sanskrit, from sukta. So some scholars say it's come from sukta. It's something like it's fixed. It fixes the Dharma for us, so that we're more certain what the teaching is. So that's another sense of sutta, right? So the suttas are the teachings, especially in the Sutta Nipata. Sutta Nipata is on the oldest, really old, going back to the early years of the Buddha's awakening. And some of the suttas, like the last chapter, what is quoted in other suttas. And then you have the Nidesa. Nidesa actually is a commentary, but it is a canonical commentary. It is found in the Tipitaka. And then you have the Vinaya. There are also suttas, but the sutta refers to the rules. The Vibhanga is the Vinaya book, but it is also, it's quite old. So it's very useful, explains the Four Noble Truths, for example. And you have texts with the word sutta in their name, usually. No? Now, one of the oldest texts in the Sutta Nipata is called the Parayana Vagga. Okay? And the other one is called Attaka Vagga. Then second one is Geya. Geya is mixed prose and verse. So you got verses and prose, especially the first part of the Samyutta Nikaya. You get the Buddha will say, okay, this is the verse spoken by certain devas, and then kind of just say it out. And it's up to the teachers to explain it. Then you have Kasi Bharadwaja Sutta. There are lots of verses there. Okay, the Brahmins like to speak in verses, and the Buddha will reply in verses also. Now, Vyakarana, by itself, this Vyakarana can mean grammar. For example, in Thailand, they pronounce it the Sanskrit way, Vyakon. Karana becomes kon. And so here, the original meaning Vyakarana means exposition. That means elaboration of the brief teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha very often gives short teachings, and it becomes expanded by Sariputta, Moggallana, and other monks. And then you have the Gatha. See the long R here, Gatha, the verses, especially famous are the Dhammapada, Theragatha, Therigatha, Sutta Nipata are all preserved in verses. The verses are beautiful. They kind of, there's a timing to them, and there are scholars who can tell you where the long and short come in. It's closer to Greek poetry than Western poetry. So that's a very interesting feature of the Gathas. Udana are inspired utterances, joyful statements of uplift. Something wonderful happens and the Buddha will say something. For example, there'll be a monk sitting down meditating, and then the Buddha will say, okay, look at that monk, she's meditating, this is what you should be doing. And then the Buddha will explain the virtue of it. So it's called inspired utterances. And there is a book by itself called Udana. But then there are separate Udanas found here and there in the Majjhima, even in the Vinaya, and so on. Okay. Then there is a special collection. I'm very proud to mention this one, Iti Uttaka. Iti means thus, like open quote, close quote, iti. So, it means so, okay? Vuttaka, spoken, so spoken like that, okay? Iti Vuttaka. This is one special collection. It's a short book, thin, small book in the Khuddaka Nikaya. It was memorized by a woman, a hunchback, in fact. She was a servant of the queen. The queen could not go to listen to the Buddha, so the queen sent this slave to listen, and then she comes back, teach the Dhamma to the queen. And in the end, she herself became a stream winner. Right, so this is the Iti Vuttaka. Iti Vuttaka and Udana, they're very close together. They're put together in the Udana. And then you have the Jatakas. Jatakas are birth stories, past lives of the Buddha. But then you have also Jatakas in the Kuttadanta Sutta and Mahā Sudassana, very long sutta. This Mahā Sudassana is amazing. You can make it into a movie, very beautiful story about meditation, about jhanas and so on. The meditation is transformed into huge, beautiful palaces and buildings by this king. And then you have Mahā Govinda, and of course Jataka verses. Only the verses are canonical, okay? The stories are commentarial. What the early Buddhists did was they have these verses, and then they use the stories available at that time, and they were really geniuses. They were able to retell these stories in connection with these wonderful verses, reflecting on the life of the Buddha, what he did in the past to show his generosity, his patience and wisdom, and so on. And then we come to the topic today, Vedalla, the answers to questions and answers, catechism. Okay, so there you are. You have a quick overview of the ninefold teachings of the Buddha. All right, let's look at the translation. Mahā Vedalla Sutta. My page is 18, further down. Okay, I passed it already. Right, here we are, Mahā Vedalla Sutta, a discourse on the Greater Catechism, N43. Right, so it starts the Pali Text Society, Pali, page 292. Volume 1, page 292. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Blessed One was, oh dear, staying, not straying. So in Excerpt, staying at Anathapindika's Park. Okay, so here we have the location. But what's interesting here is the location is just to mention where the Buddha is. So we have only this Sariputta Moggallana talking actually. So this is to respect the Buddha. Say, okay, he's there. He is. He's still alive. He's present in Jeta's Grove in Savatthi. Then in the evening, the Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita, having emerged from his solitary retreat, approached the Venerable Sariputta and exchanged greetings with him. Now you have to imagine this scene. These monks, they live in a forest monastery. They're called parks. Notice here, Anathapindika's Park, right? The sutta doesn't say monastery. So these are the trees all around, and there is a big open space for meeting, and maybe there's one big building for the monks to have their meals and maybe Dhamma meeting. And there are little kutis, little cells kind of scattered in the woods in the forest, very quiet, very peaceful. And the monks would go into retreat early morning, kind before dawn, and then late evening, dusk. So this is the evening. The elder Mahā Koṭṭhita comes out of his solitary retreat, and then he goes to see Sariputta. Usually during this kind of retreat, they do reflect on the Dhamma, and some thoughts will come to them. Oh, let me do this, let me do that. So in this case, Mahā Koṭṭhita decides to see Sariputta, and he's going to ask him some questions. When this courteous so the exchange greetings. When this courteous and friendly exchange was concluded, the Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita sat down at one side, and sitting thus at one side, the Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita said this to the Venerable Sariputta. Right? So here again, notice how when they sit to each other, they sit at one side. I'm not sure exactly whether it is sitting to the right side or left side. There are some commentaries which says they have to look at the direction, so they'll sit downwind, so that the wind does not blow their smell to the teacher, right? So or to the senior, and they'll take a lower seat and so on. Is respect for the teacher, but basically they will sit not too near, not too far, so they can hear each other clearly, and kind of show their respect by that closeness. So this is where listening to Dharma, to sit close up to the teacher, say, if you're early, sit in the front seat, is to show respect to the teacher also. All right, so sitting thus at one side, the Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita said this to the Venerable Sariputta. All right, so first it asked this question, section 2. The unwise, duppañña, avuso. So it is said. In reference to what is it said? The unwise. So notice here, the way the question is asked, it's just a word. Okay? What does this mean? Okay, how do you define this word? Of course, Mahā Koṭṭhita could have stated himself, but here, if Sariputta says it, it's something special. Here we have the sutta spoken by Sariputta, asked by Mahā Koṭṭhita. So imagine how wonderful this is for us, right? And the style of asking in the Vedalla is always similar in this way. A word is used, and the question is in reference to what? So this word is always referring to something, always talking about something. What is it about? And Sariputta gives a very simple definition. This simple definition is to help teachers explain this according to their understanding and depending on the circumstances. So that, the suttas don't give us a long treatise, then you find, wow, only specialists can study it. So anyone can study this. The answer is just one line, but you got to think about it. From that one line grows many lines. What takes only 1 second to say, we take maybe half an hour, 1 hour to discuss and understand. Then Sariputta replies, one does not understand avuso. Therefore, one is said to be unwise. Now, this doesn't sound very dramatic in English because we are thinking in English. So this is where, from my translations, I've discovered that you got to, in a way, think in Pali, or at least know the Pali idiom. Now, it's not as difficult as the way I say it. As you study the suttas, you begin to understand, and that's when you begin to think in Pali. Of course, it helps to say that the Pali was like dukkha and so on, but not necessarily so. That is what we're trying to do here in the Sutta Discovery series. We try to translate everything without missing any lines or the way the Pali words are presented, as much closely as possible to the Pali. At the same time, we can understand it in English. So you have the English idiom as well as the Pali idiom preserved. So here, notice I have put in the Pali word also, na pajānāti. Now you see this P hanging like that is an extra P. That is why I put a hyphen, meaning you can disconnect it from the na in front. And there's a comma here, meaning you don't have to join it up with a P at the back. So it's na means not. Sometimes the na shortened becomes a, okay? Just like in English, you got a in the front, which is the opposite of a word. And then pajānāti. Okay, Janati means to know. Okay, pajānāti also means to know, but pajānāti you can translate as to understand. Pajānāti. Okay, this janati comes from the root viññāna, to know. So you have many words that become these know words, to know this, to know that. We'll come to them a little later. So one does not know, therefore one does not understand, says Sariputta. Now, so notice they address each other avuso. Both call each other avuso. So this avuso is not a word of rank. They treat each other as equals while the Buddha was alive. After the Buddha, when the Buddha was going to pass away, he instructed the monks that only the juniors were called the senior monks avuso. Avuso means one with age. One with age, okay? Avu, avu is ayu, same as ayu. So instead of ayuso, it is shortened to avuso. Now, both V and there's no V in Pali or Sanskrit. The V becomes W. So sometimes some becomes a Y. So both V and Y are what are called semi-vowels. So avuso, okay? All one. Friend. And the senior calls junior avuso, but junior must address senior as Bhante. Bhante simply means sir. Okay, so juniors address seniors as Bhante. So that's how today end up people addressing the monks as Bhante, which simply means sir. Actually, it is used by lay people also. All right, so one is unwise because one does not understand. So in order to understand, you got to know first. So this is a very basic thing. So it starts from there. You're learning Pali, right? So you begin there about importance of learning. Okay, let's see what's next. Go down a bit more. All right. So now, and knowing, and what does one not understand? Okay, so here, Mahā Koṭṭhita continues the question. One does not understand, and Sariputta continues the answer. One does not understand. This is suffering. One does not understand. This is the arising of suffering. One does not understand. This is the ending of suffering. One does not understand. This is the way to the ending of suffering. Now we all know this. See, that's the thing. Pajānāti, we all know this. But then, do we understand it? Right? So when we start with knowing, that's the important thing. To understand also means to experience it, to see it as true, to see it as universal, to see it as never wrong, that suffering exists in different forms. Right? For example, we may say, oh, suffering, all right? Now I'm very happy. This is not suffering, right? It's the opposite of suffering, we may think. Well, in conventional language, it is true. I'm happy now, but so I'm not suffering, right? In a manner of speaking, on a simple level, maybe on a body level. But what happens when the happiness is gone? Then we miss it, we want it, and we cannot always get it. So in a sense, this joy is the basis of sorrow. They kind of go together, back and forth, all right? Of course, we're not saying that, oh, when you're happy, you should feel sad. We don't go that far. It's more like a warning. It's more like, okay, be happy. It's all right to be happy. But remember, it will end. There is an ending. So when the happiness ends, what do? Then we know what happiness is. And when we know what happiness is, we also know what suffering is. And when we see people suffering, we try to make them happy because we know what happiness is. So to that extent, we have wisdom. We're able to cut down suffering in ourselves and in others by sharing this joy, right? So the Dhamma is telling us, this first noble truth is telling us, there is this joy, but you just got to go on making the effort. It's never forever. It's not lasting. You just keep on doing it. You have to keep on doing it until you are awakened. When you awaken, yes, that joy is always there, whether you do things or not. Right? Then the arising, why? It's because we keep on wanting it. And then so the idea is to end it. Nirvana. And the Buddha says, here's the path. You follow this and you will understand. You will find a way to overcome this suffering. No more suffering after that. Then you understand. Right? But here, the Sariputta says, one does not understand. One does not understand avuso. Therefore, one is said to be unwise. Because the unwise person will go on getting caught in suffering and doesn't know why. Then Sadhu avuso said, the Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita, joyfully approving of the Venerable Sariputta's word. Imagine it. Mahā Koṭṭhita feels happy. He's an arahat, so he hears Dhamma, he feels happy. And we also feel happy to hear the Dhamma. We have a sense of calmness, safety. That is a very deep joy, in fact. Then he asks another question. Now this time is the opposite of that of first. Yeah? The wise, paññā. Okay, here is an adjective. Of course, you can use paññā also as adjective, but here is paññā, we are more certain it's an adjective. Avuso, so it is said. In what way avuso? Is one said to be wise? One understands, pajānāti, avuso, therefore one is said to be wise. So that we establish that basic truth first. And then, so Sariputta goes on, and what does one understand? One understands this is suffering. This is unsatisfactory. Right? For example, just now when I look at this passage, oops, we have one typo there. That is unsatisfactory. But we know this is not a mistake of the Dhamma. This is our own mistake, and we all make mistakes, but just a matter of correcting it. And it's really fun to correct it. It's fun to know there is this, we discover this mistake and we want to correct it, right? We don't have the wrong, there are some scholars who found some errors in our sutta discovery, and they got quite furious about it and complained to the lecturer, and then I was told about it, and so on. So they can get very upset. It's as if we owe them some kind of really wonderful passage for free, But all this means hard work. So, but imagine when you love doing something, and you can see the mistakes, you want to correct it, if you're happy. So the joy comes from doing simple things, from correcting a single letter. There is this joy. Imagine, so some of these proof readers I have, they are really brilliant scholars in their own right, and they will write to me, sharing me their ideas. They're very polite about mistakes I made, or they think how a passage could be better. So we learn from each other in different ways. And it is a joy to have that kind of friend. You have people who help to correct your mistakes, in order to make your work better. And it affects, it benefits other people who use the suttas too. So there you are. Because of suffering, we remove it, right? A typo is a suffering. Dukkha is not something satisfactory. So don't imagine suffering is just falling down, something hitting us, It's something not satisfactory, something not correct also is a suffering, which needs to be corrected, which can be corrected. All right? And that, of course, why these things happen? Well, it's because of our human weakness, the shortages in our mindfulness, weaknesses in our abilities to see clearly at that time, and so on, right? So we learn a lot of things. So that's why even in the translating suttas, you learn a lot. In proofing the suttas, you learn a lot. And of course, reading the fair copy of the sutta is even more wonderful. So there you are, the ending of suffering, and then you follow the path yourself. So one understands, avuso, therefore one is said to be wise. So notice here the simplicity of the teaching, and then you find the teacher goes on to explain, make it more real, okay? All right, so now as usual, we'll stop a while. So 5 minutes time, we'll come back and start again with consciousness. Okay, let us continue. Now, we're going to study this part of the Mahā Vedalla Sutta where they talk about the 5 aggregates, all right? So we're going to start with consciousness. So now, Mahā Koṭṭhita asks this question. Consciousness, okay, Pali word viññāna, viññāna, T. Avuso, so it is said, in what way avuso? Is it called consciousness? Why is it called consciousness? It cognizes, viññānati, avuso, therefore it is called consciousness. Now, scholars of psychology will look at this, oh, it's not very imaginative, you know, I mean, okay, so it cognizes and then it's consciousness. Now, as I said, if you look at Pali, they have the root, viññāna, to know. And then here, notice there is janati, to know, right? And then there is the prefix vi. You don't say v, okay, you say we, like w, wi. We janati. Now this we prefixes and are very important in Pali, and so are suffixes. This is the suffix t. So this is grammatical, and this one are more like ideas. So this t shows that this is a third person singular t. If it is first person singular, me, viññāna, I know. Okay, viññānama, we know. So the viññānati, he knows. Viññānanti, they know. All right. All right. So we, it means to split up, to separate, to know in separate ways. What does it mean to know in separate ways? When we know something, we know through the eye, ear, the nose, tongue, the body, or the mind. So in that sense, it is viññānati, to know kind of separately, in separate parts, so to speak. And this is the verb. And when you have the noun, it becomes viññāna. Notice jnana by itself means knowledge already, right? The shorter words have a deeper meaning. So this refers to true knowledge, like awakening knowledge. Okay, it's a broad term, knowledge. Then the we takes in another double ñ because of the this n here, to make sure that you remember there's a ñ here. So it is viññāna. So that's the peculiarity of Pali. Viññāna has been translated into English quite commonly as consciousness. You can also say it knows, viññānati, right? So cognize is a big word. Here, what does it cognize? What does it know? It cognizes this is pleasant, this is nice, no? It cognizes this is painful, dukkha. It cognizes this is neutral. All right, so it sees something as pleasant, painful, neutral. So it just knows. All right, it cognizes, it knows. Therefore, it is called consciousness. So here it notices something pleasant. For example, you look at something and say, this is nice. All right, so that first stage is called this viññāna, right? It's just like we were reading just now, the passage, and we found a typo. We found a letter which is not to be there, right? Instead of staying, we say praying, right? So we say, okay, there's an extra R there, right? So we are conscious of it. But what's interesting here is there is no feeling behind it. And feeling is next. Let's look at the next part now on feelings. All right, there you are, down there, feeling. So this time, Mahā Koṭṭhita asks, feeling, Vedana. Avuso, so it is said, in what way avuso is it called feeling? Then the Sariputta replies, it feels, Vedeti, avuso. Therefore, it is called feeling, Vedana. All right, we have a bit of a problem here. Because if you say English, it feels. Some people may say, oh, feeling is, you can't use it here. It means something else. You have to think of some other word. I like to think of the simplest word we can connect with it, right? But the important thing, remember the Pali, Vedeti. Ved, or with, the root is with. Okay, so from there you get to know, Vedeti, right? Again here, T ending, meaning third person singular. Vedemi, I know. Vedema, we know. Right? Vedeti, he knows. And then Vedenti, they know. And when you change them to a noun, the T becomes na. This is a feminine noun. Vedana, okay? Feeling. Now, this gender in Pali grammar has nothing to do with male, female. It's just the way they classify words, whether you have an open vowel or a closed vowel. So feeling is Vedana. The verb is Vedeti. Now, the next question is interesting. Yeah? Let's go on the next one. What does it feel? Okay, yes. So, what does it feel? It feels this is pleasant. It feels this is painful. It feels this is neutral, right? So notice the three words are the same for conscious also, but here it feels, meaning there is a kind of affective value. There's a kind of liking, disliking, which of course up to the teacher to explain. And then let's look at the next one, perception. Okay, now this is the next of the 5 aggregates. Perception, saññā. Here again, ñā word. Okay, the root janya become ñā, saññā. Sang is just like S-A-M, like sangha, same. Only thing where the ñā here, the ang becomes ñā also. Saññā. So this is to know together, like com in front here. No? All right, so perception, saññā avuso. So it is said. In what way avuso is it called perception? It perceives. Pajānāti avuso. Therefore, it is called perception. Saññā. From pajānāti, we get saññā. From the verb, we get the noun. Okay. Let me read this and now I'll explain the grammar of it. And what does it perceive? Okay, it perceives blue, or it perceives yellow, or it perceives red, it perceives white. Here, the idea of these colors is it recognizes. You see blue, you recognize it as blue, right? You know the name, it's blue, or yellow, or red, or white. So it perceives. Therefore, it is called perception, right? Okay, now look at this word, sanjanati. Again, you have the janati, to know, but the prefix is sang, which is same as com in English, or Latin rather, to put together. This is to know in a way of to put together. So to perceive is to recognize, to remember. So we put together clues in our mind, or clues we see in front of us, clues we hear, clues through our senses, and then we say, okay, that's it, right? It's just like we saw the typo just now. We know, we recognize, we say, oh, it's not supposed to be this letter. This letter is not supposed to be there, right? So we put together that idea and we say, okay, this is wrong. So, and then we correct it, okay? So there you are, that's perception. So consciousness, you notice the letter, and then perceive, you notice it's different because you remember from the past that that's the way it is. It's not the way it's spelled, all right? So we have consciousness, feeling, and perception. So now we put them together. This is the last part for today, I think. Yeah. Let's look at this 9. Feeling, perception, and consciousness avuso. Are these 3 states associated or dissociated? And is it possible to separate these states to describe their difference? Sariputta replies, feeling, perception, and consciousness avuso. These states are associated, not dissociated. And it is not possible to separate these states to describe their difference. For avuso, what one feels, that one perceives. What one perceives, that one cognizes. Notice 3 different words working together. Feels, perceive, cognizes. Therefore, avuso, these states are associated, not dissociated. And it is impossible to separate these states to describe their differences. So the 5 aggregates, in other words, work together, but the different words are used to show different aspects of our experiences, right? So, for example, when we see something, that is cognizing, that's action of the eye. And then we see a shadowy figure, we don't know what it is. And then we say, oh, it's a person. Right? Then, okay, that is perception, because we know the idea of a person. And then we go deeper. We know this person because we have met him before. We remember, we know the name, and then that's the nama, and then you have the rupa over there. Then we connect them together. That is perception also. We know, okay, this is so and so. Okay, this is Ananda, right? And then we say, oh, he's a nice guy. I like him. Okay, so you have that feeling there. So there you are. The 3 work together. They are the aspect of the same mind. So there you are. This is what we can study from this to cover the part which is about the aggregates. All right, I will stop now. So we have about just under 15 minutes for questions.
Brother Piya, I have a question.
All right, sure.
So if there is no soul, so then when we say that Buddha's previous rebirths and Sariputta's rebirths and your and mine, so all our rebirths are different. So how does this then make sense if everything is impersonal?
Well, the thing is, I think if you reverse the question, if there are actual souls, don't you think it makes things more difficult? Then everything is fixed, you know, and then we don't change. We don't kind of grow. We don't transform ourselves. Now, you got to examine the idea of soul. There's no fixed idea. You find you go to different religion, different teachers, they will kind of tell you in different ways. So what the Buddha is against is this idea that there is a fixed essence, something unchanging. The scientists tried this also. They thought there was something before the idea of atoms. There was something fixed in the universe because everything is changing. There must be something fixed. And after many years, they find that there's no such thing. They called it the phlogiston at one time, you know. Then, of course, they discovered the atom. They thought, okay, the atom is something indivisible. Atomos cannot be cut anymore. But then later, with Rutherford, they found that even the atom can be split. You can kind of transform into another element. So there is no scientific soul called atom also. So the Buddha is simply asking you, if you say there's a soul, where is it? Can you see it, show it? You can only talk about it, right? So the idea that there is no soul means there's nothing fixed in our personality and destiny except what we do. The karmic habit that we keep on building up, you see. So we recognize each other, or we know ourselves by our karmic habits. And the karmic habits, of course, affect one another. We interact with each other through these karmic habits. And when we talk about all these actions and interactions, can we say there is one final action? There is the essence of this action. This Plato tried to come up with this idea. He says, how do we know there is a cup in front of me or a table in front of us? Because somewhere in the heavens among the gods, there is this primordial table. There is this archetypal table. There is a final shape, a soul of a table, if you like. Because of that, we know this table down here. But of course, that idea never got on really. It's an interesting idea, but you don't need that kind of idea. So that much I can say for the moment. So do think about it and see how you can go further from that. This is one question that has no end, because there's always something new coming up. It's very interesting to think about it. You are dealing with yourself in this case. You're dealing with ideas that you were taught before, things you have experienced, and ask yourself all these questions. What does this mean? Can there be such a thing? Right? So, and then you find it's very interesting when you discover this new way of looking at this kind of ideas.
And the purpose is that if there is no fixed me or no anybody else, so why do we then study Dhamma, why we practice, and why we want to put an end to suffering for ourselves?
Well, for the very reason there is no fixed I. If there was a fixed I don't need to study Dhamma, isn't it? Because of this fixed thing, you see, I'm already going to be this. It's something like fatalism, you know. I'm going to be this already, so I don't need to do anything. Whatever I do makes no difference anyway. There is a difference. We have no control over the aggregates. So we have to learn to train ourselves. We have to tame ourselves, in a sense, to have some control so that we are not overtaken by all these ideas. Okay?
I have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, on rebirths, basically. So, like I read somewhere or heard that Buddha says that like every being has almost been, or not almost, actually been in every plane in the universe, like experienced from bottom to top. So, is that true? Is that correct?
Well, this is one of those, what should I say, the Indian literary language, because there's so many lives, you know, to show the immensity of life, the countlessness of number of lives. It is possible. The Buddha didn't say it absolutely true. It's possible that we have been reborn in all these different places. We have played different roles in society. It's possible because of so many lives. There's no way of proving it, unfortunately. Or that we can say it is possible, right? So the idea of rebirth gives us that possibility. So it's flexible. The Indians come up with this amazing genius of an idea, you know, where you don't have to fix things. These are possibilities, meaning we can change. If there is the idea of soul, you don't change. You just follow instructions. That's one way of putting it. All right.
And
okay.
Sure. If we connect it to unsatisfactoriness, like you were mentioning earlier during the course. So, for example, say if we have been in heaven earlier, or say we had sensual pleasures or something in our life before, and then we don't have it. So then there is unsatisfactoriness. So we try to correct that situation. And then again it goes away. And then again we want it back. So we keep trying to correct that unsatisfactoriness, but how many times should we do it? You know, it keeps
Right.
things keep
Oh,
going.
yes, it's endless. That is why it is suffering. You just got to keep on doing it. And the Buddha keeps reminding us, you see how many times you have to do it? Don't you get tired of it? That's why you got to, people renounce the world. They take the ropes, you know. It's not exactly a shortcut, but it's definitely cuts down a lot of suffering. So we got to keep on telling ourselves, what do I learn from this? What do I learn from this? So when you learn something, the journey is a little bit more comfortable. You know these things will happen, you stay away. Or you know it has happened, then this is how you correct it. So this wisdom helps, despite all these vicissitudes of life. Yeah? So in other words, you understand that's the nature of life and you work with it. You don't let yourself be caught up with it. That's the meaning. It's like someone who knows martial arts. So he knows this bad guy will do all kinds of movements, and he's able to avoid them. He's able to absorb or use the energy to push it away, for example. So it's a bit of what should I say, psychic art instead of martial arts. Buddhism is teaching us that how to move away a bit from that painful, what should we say, attacks from samsara. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Rana, how do I make my picture smaller? Huh? Because I have this big picture of me and I can't see other people. I can't hear you, Rana. Your voice.
Wait, I come over.
Okay. In the meantime, you can ask questions, yeah?
Hello, Brother Piya.
Oh, yes, yeah, okay. I think, wait, hold on, I know. Remove spotlight. Yes, all right. Okay, please. Yeah, I got it, Rana, thanks.
Okay, few questions. I know we don't have much time left. First of all, thank you so much for agreeing to discuss this particular sutta. I'm just very curious, how is it that Sankara was never mentioned in this discussion or this exchange?
Who? Sorry? Oh, Sankara.
Yeah.
Well, this is not a sutta on the 5 aggregates. Here, the main ideas, just the 4 ideas instead. Sankara is not mentioned. Maybe, I don't know whether later is mentioned or not, or in other forms. This is more like an introduction. It's not exactly about the 5 aggregates. All I mentioned is about the 5 aggregates. So, if, for example, I was not surprised that Sankara was not mentioned. The Sankara goes a little deeper, if you like. Yeah, perhaps that's why it's not mentioned. And we have not finished the sutta yet.
Okay.
So I don't know whether we should finish it because it's quite profound. Let me reflect on this.
Okay.
Yeah. So because Sankara has to do with what covers the whole universe, all existence. And that will bring on a lot of other ideas. So here, the question and answer, I think they want to be focused.
Okay. Yeah, I think in relation to Sankara also is the fact that there are different translations for Sankara.
Oh, yes, yes.
And therefore, the understanding of Sankara sometimes is a little bit hazy for me.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's one. The other thing is this, there was this paragraph on wisdom and consciousness, which Brother Piya, you didn't quite touch on, but it basically says that wisdom and consciousness also are also associated, right? They cannot be disassociated.
Yes.
So by virtue of that, therefore, can we therefore say that feeling, perception, consciousness, and wisdom are also associated?
Oh, yes, yes. That's the last part just now that we were reading. They're all interconnected.
Correct.
They work together.
And that they're also connected to the wisdom part. Because the paragraph on wisdom was only in relation to wisdom and consciousness, not to the other. so-called mind aggregates?
Yeah, I think it's mentioned with consciousness because at that level, if you see what's going on without being carried away by perception, without being biased by feeling, then you're more likely to have wisdom. If you are caught by the bias of feeling, because feeling make you biased, feeling make you, oh, I like this, I don't like this, then there's no wisdom in the Buddha sense. It narrows down the experience. You know what I mean? Whereas wisdom widens the experience. You see the big picture. So that's why it's spoken more with consciousness and not just with something that will narrow it down. Do I make myself clear there? If you're not sure, please ask again, because sometimes maybe I don't say enough things.
Yeah, it's just that in this particular sutta itself, consciousness is also labeled as, you know, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So again, there are these three dimensions. It's not
because consciousness is our whole mental experience, you see.
Right.
So it depends on how you look at it.
So in that sense, we could also say there is a certain biasness to it as well.
Yeah, in an unenlightened mind, yeah, maybe the way I say something, I could be biased from what I don't know, you see. Then later I will realize. So that's how we learn. It's all professional learning. Then as we progress, you say, oops, okay, I got this a bit wrong here, so I got to correct this. So we begin with the idea that consciousness covers everything. Then there's this part of consciousness which is feeling. There's a part of this consciousness which is karma, that is, you know, the sankhara part, and so on. So we begin, this consciousness is like a big screen from which you see these different actions being projected, and then you recognize them. And that's wisdom, okay? So you see feeling, you see perception, but you're not influenced by them in a negative way. All right, yes. Any other question? You can still go on a bit, although this time. If you have a question, then it's okay. No more questions, huh?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just mull over this.
Yes, you have to read this. There are lots of notes there. Make notes. Okay.
Thank you.
The one important way is to look at yourself, the way you think, the way you act, your own experiences, and then try to see how these things you have learned, the five aggregates, explain what's going on before you. And that's really interesting when you notice that. But you are the experiment. I'm the experiment for myself. Then I begin to understand better what's going on, that what I am even. All right? Okay, no more questions, huh?
Sorry, Brother Piya. Does this mean that you're going to continue discussing this particular sutta in the next few sessions? Or
I have a feeling you want that, right?
Sorry?
I have a feeling you want that, is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting, but at the same time,
very nuanced, it's going to cover quite a wide area. I have to tell you, it's not going to be focused. For example, in the next part, we're going to talk about various realms, but very general, in a very general way. So it's a good introduction. Okay, we will explore it. We'll just go on and see how far it can take us, how far we can understand, and what questions we can ask.
Okay.
Yeah, then we can, I suppose. Then I don't have to prepare right now, and I don't have to prepare new suttas. Okay,
Sorry.
that's good. No, nothing. Don't apologize. It is sutta study, so we welcome your suggestions. All right, that's wonderful. No? So we can end here. No more questions, huh? Okay, let us put our minds together once again for this wonderful moment we have spent together practicing the Dhamma. Remember this moment, please, because this is how your karma becomes good and strong inside you. And by all these good deeds we have done, send your kind thoughts, first of all to yourself, that you may be well and healthy, to study the Dharma and do good works, good things, and let your wisdom grow. And send your kind thoughts to your loved ones, people you care for, people important to you. And we close by giving 3 salutations to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.